SCV, Lieutenant SQ Fraser, Camp 668 Fraser, High Point, North Carolina, to join Miss Teresa Wrong, Richmond Stonewall Jackson UDC Chapter 1705, and Captain Sally I. Tompkins, OCR Chapter 2 in Richmond, Virginia. This wreath of remembrance is for Mary Clyburn, 12th South Carolina Infantry, Confederate States of America, the women and men of color, Confederate States of America. Mary Clyburn, who served Company 12th South Carolina Infantry, the people of the South, thank you. We shall never forget the honorable service of men and women of color who have been long forgotten and not recognized for the fact they gave their all for the Confederate military. First, we'd like to welcome Vice Chairman, Union County Board of Commissioners, Mr. Jerry B. Simpson. On behalf of the Board of County Commissioners in Union County, I want to welcome all of you from near as well as far to Union County, and I want to thank all those responsible for this service and for allowing me to be a part. Mattie Clyburn Rice was dedicated to her father's memory and to the facts surrounding his participation in the war. Just as the issues surrounding that war were complex, so were the lives and relationships of each of those who served. My great-grandfather was a sergeant in the North Carolina 48th Infantry. In researching his service and from the family stories handed down about that time, I can relate to those complexities and a desire to fully understand that period in our nation's history. President Lincoln, in his second inaugural address, said in referring to the Union and the Confederacy that both read the same Bible and pray to the same God. We can only speculate as to the details of the relationship between Mary Clyburn and Captain Frank Clyburn, but I will assume that they drank from the same stream, they felt the same heat and cold, and they witnessed the same ugliness that is a part of war. Miss Rice understood both the complexities and the similarities that those, whether black or white, shared living in the South, here in Union County, and living through the war. I am honored by her commitment to her family's history, to her heritage, and to her father's service. Thank you. Now from the Order of Confederate Rose, from the North Carolina Society, State President Laura Stoller.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the North Carolina Society Order of Confederate Rose, it is our privilege to gather here today on hallowed ground in remembrance as we mourn the passing of Mattie Clyburn Rice, a true and gracious lady of the South. The legacy Miss Mattie leaves behind will inspire generations to seek the truth in a never-ending search for our heritage, Southern roots, and our love of family. Miss Mattie Rice Clyburn takes her place in history. Her name, along with our loved ones that went before, will now and forever be written in stone. Thank you.
Now on behalf of the South Carolina Society, State President Lisa Graham.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
I'd like to remind everyone, the best way that you can honor Miss Mattie is to remember and to find the pride in your family heritage, the pride that she had in hers. And remember to pass it on to your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren, just as she did. Thank you.
Maryland Society, Liz Grosler.
It is my privilege to bring greetings from the Maryland Division, Petty Carry Chapter number 28, of the North Carolina Society of the Order of Confederate Rose. It is an honor to be here today, and we would like to offer our sincere condolences to the family and friends of Miss Mattie. Thank you so much.
The Virginia Society, State President Teresa Wells.
Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Wells. I'm with the Virginia Society, Order of the Confederate Rose. It's an honor to be here and to remember and celebrate the life of Miss Mattie Clyburn Rice, a real daughter of the Confederacy, and her lifelong dedication to pay tribute to her father, Mary Clyburn, along with 9 other soldiers, to see that they were remembered and honored with a historical marker. It is an honor to call Miss Mattie one of the OCR sisters. Thank you.
Now for the founder of the Black Rose, Yvonne Brown.
Thank you. Today I bring you greetings in behalf of Mattie. Remember to something that we all need to do. We need to remember why we're here. And years ago, in 1998, I started the Society of the Black Rose. We see soldiers carrying flags. We hear cannons, we hear gunshots. That reminds us of war. But what about the ladies at home? Many of the ladies made the flags that the soldiers carried, so that the last thing they saw may have been a piece of home, because that flag was made from their mother's, their wife's dress, or their shawl. This was their last view of their home area. But at home, there was something else to be thought about. The women who had lost their husbands, their brothers, their fathers. We needed to think about them. So our organization, the Ladies Wearing Black, will bring a human part to any kind of memorial service to remind you that not only the men were fighting battles, but the women were at home. And they will remember their loved ones that they lost. Thank you.
Now from the Children of the Confederacy, South Carolina Division, Ms. Chandler Tucker, Second Vice President.
On behalf of the South Carolina Division of the Children of the Confederacy, I bring you greetings. It was my privilege on December of 2012 to be present at the dedication of the monument of the pensioners of color. I had the honor of meeting Miss Mattie at that time. As children of the Confederacy, we honor her today for her love of her home, her persuadance of sharing the truth of her father's bravery, and his willing service to the Confederacy. And for this example, she sat as a real daughter of the Confederacy. It is our desire to continue Miss Mattie's legacy of teaching the true history of the South to future generations. Thank you for allowing me the honor of being a part of this memorial service for this great Southern lady.
Now from the United Daughters of the Confederacy, first, Teresa Roan, Archivist, General Headquarters.
I bring you greetings on behalf of President General Jamie Likens and the General Organization of the United Daughters of the Confederacy. We honor and cherish our real daughters. Miss Mattie was admired for her strength in pursuing with all her might the proof of her father's Confederate service. We were all saddened to hear the news of her passing. She will never be forgotten, and we know her legacy will live on for many generations. Thank you.
Now for the North Carolina Division of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, Past President Lois Marlowe.
Mattie Clyburn Rice. To us, she was Miss Mattie. She was a proud member of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, a real daughter. This past spring, I had the unique opportunity to spend a little time with Miss Mattie as we happened to be attending the same event. What a wonderful experience. I gained so much inspiration by just conversing with this wise woman. Miss Mattie was a petite lady in stature, however she was large in her resolve. She was bright, persistent, kind, and a mentor to us all. She was a quiet, elegant, classy lady who could light up a room just by her presence there. We loved Miss Mattie, and we miss her. We are all better people today for having known her. Our tears are not for Miss Mattie. We weep for ourselves because we feel the loss. We must celebrate her. She is rejoicing in the presence of our Lord. She is tripping around heaven wearing her crown of glory and her red hat. She is reunited with Mr. Weary and Mama Eliza, Mr. Theotis, and her precious daughter Barbara, and all of her ancestors and friends. She's looking down on us from above, saying, "Do not weep for me, rejoice with me." Mattie Clyburn Rice has left us a legacy of love, family, and friendship. May we honor her by keeping alive her memory for future generations. Thank you.
Now from the South Carolina Division of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, President Ann Shugart.
On behalf of the South Carolina Division, United Daughters of the Confederacy, I bring greetings to you today as we gather here under these Carolina blue skies on this bright and beautiful fall day to honor the memory of our daughter, Miss Mattie. It is appropriate that we remember Miss Mattie for her contributions and her dedications to UDC. I have something very interesting that I wish to share with you today. As I was reading an article in the September 2009 UDC magazine about Miss Mattie, I noticed her father was born in Lancaster, South Carolina. On the Find a Grave website, I noticed what unit and what company Mr. Clyburn was in. Do you realize my two great-great-grandfathers who lived in Lancaster County also served with Mr. Clyburn? I just could not believe that. So I did not know Miss Mattie, but I do have a close bond with her and with the family because I know our ancestors knew each other and served together. I would like to read a poem to you today that is written by a UDC daughter from Florida and was read at a memorial service at General Convention. I'm sure there's a UDC chapter in heaven, for so many members and also Miss Mattie have transferred there. I'm hoping they'll save a seat, a place in that chapter with my name on a special chair. Think of how large that chapter must be, of all the love that's spread around, with all those voices in harmony. Think of how wonderful Dixie must sound. I miss my friends that have transferred, their smiles and the love we share, but I know that someday I'll join them. I don't know when, but I'm sure of where. Rest in peace, Miss Mattie. Well done. Thank you.
Now for someone close to Miss Mattie, for chapter president in the Guilford chapter 301, President Joanne Sharp.
With all her gentleness, Mattie was strong, generous, dedicated, determined, and exhibited great tenacity when necessary. She was a lady who gave love and laughter. She was everything I admire. Our chapter was richer for her being a part of it. She held everyone's attention when she told the story about the years and the hardships she endured to gather the information, not to just join UDC, but to prove the facts about her father and that war. We all love the picture of Mary Clyburn holding his violin with his veteran's pen on his coat. Mattie gave us the gift of knowing him too. Mattie and I talk seriously about the business of UDC, but we always seem to end up giggling. one of us would set off that reaction with the other one, and we would just simply dissolve into that rich laughter that she did so well. Members of UDC from all over the country came to know Miss Mattie. They responded to her with their cards and their resources. Mattie was a wonderful woman, and she will be missed. But her imprint is eternal. It was a privilege to know her. It made each of us richer. Just imagine the joy of the reunion of Weary and Mattie. Her hero and the little girl that listened, researched for years, then went on to tell the world his story, their story. Well done, Mattie.
Now, on behalf of the Military Order of Stars and Bars, North Carolina Society, past Commander Rodney Williams.
Before I start today, I would like us all to think about something. In the 1950s, a special thing was going on. It was a sad time. The Union and Confederate veterans were passing away. Very few of them were left. In the early 1950s was the last Confederate reunion. Today we're kind of at that point. The real sons, the real daughters are passing from us. There's not too many of them left. Love them while you can. And we love Miss Mattie. Ladies and gentlemen, the Rice family, honored guests. On behalf of the Honorable Dave Edwards, Commander of the Confederate Officers of North Carolina Society, Military Order of the Stars and Bars, I bring you greetings. It is with a heavy heart that we gather here today to say goodbye to a special lady, Miss Mattie. I had the honor and privilege of meeting Miss Rice on May 10th, 2011 at the Confederate Memorial Day service in Greensboro, North Carolina, hosted by the UDC Chapter 301 Guilford Chapter, of which she was a member. With her presence as a real daughter, it made the service even that much more meaningful. Over the past several years, I've had the opportunity to know her better, especially in December when the Confederate Pensioners of Color marker was unveiled here in Monroe. I'll never forget that beautiful day as long as I live. A beautiful, sunny day, much as we have today. In 2013, I had the honor and privilege as the current MOSB North Carolina Society Commander to nominate her for the Verena Howell Davis Medal, which is awarded by the General Society of the Military Order of the Stars and Bars. And in April of 2013, Mrs. Rice and several other ladies gathered in Brown Summit, North Carolina, and were awarded the highest honor given by our society to a lady by the Commander General himself, Tony Turk, who is visiting North Carolina. Today we gather here to pay final honor for her courage, for telling the true story of her father, a South Carolina soldier, a South Carolina Confederate soldier, Mary Clyburn, who served honorably and faithfully in the Confederate Army. Today the MOSB Memorial Cannon Crew will fire 3 volleys in honor of Miss Mattie. I'd like to ask each and every one of you to please cover your ears when we fire the cannon. Our battery is normally known as Patterson's Battery, the name of one of our former members. But today, we're renaming it. It's Miss Mattie's Battery.
Now, on behalf of National Headquarters of the Military Orders of Stars and Bars, Army of Northern Virginia, Department Counselor Byron Brady.
I bring you greetings today from the Military Order of the Stars and Bars. Like our brother and sister organizations, the SCV, the UDC, the OCR, and the Children of the Confederacy, we are all proud of our Confederate ancestors. But today we are very proud of the way Miss Mattie was proud of her father's service to the Confederacy. We pay tribute to her today for the way she persisted in honoring her father over the last 50 years of her life. She was not content with the status quo. The recent Confederate memorial unveiled here in Monroe to the Union County pensioners of color was due to her dedication to a just cause she firmly believed in. We will always remember Miss Mattie as a gracious lady who loved her family as much as she loved her heritage. She was a true Southern lady.
Now, on behalf of North Carolina Division Sons Confederate Veterans, Commander Danny Bullitt.
It's an honor and privilege to bring greetings and condolences from the North Carolina Division to the family of Miss Mattie. And I want to personally thank Lieutenant Commander Stone for presenting the resolution from the North Carolina Division. We felt it best that it come from someone who was familiar with her, and Kevin certainly fit that bill and did an excellent job. I must confess that I barely knew Miss Mattie as we were introduced at a meeting earlier this year in High Point. However, I feel I know her well from the inspiration and witness of those that she influenced. I want to give special regards to our High Point camp for their contribution to Miss Mattie and the recognition that she was able to get in her life. This camp brought it out, and they cultivated her legacy as we members strive to do for one another. And also, the division is indebted to the camp and Commander Purdue for uniting this diverse group assembled in celebration of a life well lived. May the spirit of Miss Mattie thrive on in us, and may we follow her example and forever be proud of our Southern heritage.
Next, I'd like to, in honor of Weary, we'd like to welcome Jamie Graham, Chief of Staff of the South Carolina Division, Sons Confederate Veterans.
Today, I am humbled and extremely honored to be here, to be asked to be here, to bring you greetings from South Carolina Sons of Confederate Veterans. You know, I've listened to everybody talk. I've read all the articles about Confederacy and soldiers of color. But there's something that I found in every article I read, everything that I see. There's one defining moment that brought us all here today. There was a defining moment some 150 years ago. You know, we've heard the different stories, and the PC crowd talk about Mary Clyburn. For whatever reason, when Mary Clyburn left that plantation, he had a choice that he could make. It was a defining moment in history. Rather than take off to the north, or maybe run to the west for what would be perceived as freedom in his time, he chose to go to the front lines. He chose to go to the front lines out of love for friendship. Some years later, Miss Mattie, in her own words, sitting on his knee, listening to those stories as a small child, those stories of love. And today what I see here, I see a Southern gentleman and his daughter, a true Southerner, being shown love from us. And the love that Miss Mattie had that was passed to her from her father is sitting right in front of me with her family and all of us remembering who she was. Not a daughter of Confederacy, not a daughter of a soldier of color, but as a true Southern lady. And today, North Carolina and South Carolina both have something very honored and very proud. One of our sons and one of our daughters are being presented to you. Thank you.
On behalf of National Headquarters, I'd like to introduce the Army of Northern Virginia Executive Councilman, Mr. Ronnie Smith Roach.
I have 3 tasks that have been assigned to me today. The first task is to bring greetings to you and condolences to the family from the Army of Northern Virginia Commander Randy Burbage. The Army Northern Virginia commander and I, as the councilman, represent 9,754 members spread throughout the states of Delaware, Maine, Maryland, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, New Jersey, New York, Virginia, and West Virginia. And we bring those greetings to you on behalf of Commander Burbidge. I was also asked through a message to Commander Purtill from our Commander-in-Chief to bring greetings as he could not attend due to a previous appointment. Commander-in-Chief Charles Kelly Barrow has asked that I send regrets and condolences to the family and thank all of you who have participated in this event for Miss Mattie. The International headquarters of the Sons of Confederate Veterans represents 30,700 members found in North America, Great Britain, Europe, and Australia. And we bring greetings on behalf of the General Executive Committee to you for that. The third task that was assigned to me was assigned by Commander Purtill himself. He asked if I would share a personal experience that I had with Miss Mattie. I've known Miss Mattie for several years. I've been involved with several events where Miss Mattie was in attendance. In 2012, I was asked by the then North Carolina Division Commander, Tom Smith, to be the formal escort for Miss Mattie for a special presentation. At that meeting, it was going to be a joint venture between the North Carolina Division of the Order of Confederate Rose and the North Carolina Division of Sons of Confederate Veterans. I was excited, folks. I was proud. I was going to be able to escort Miss Mattie, a real daughter. I put on my dress uniform. I attached the medals to that uniform. I would put it on, stand in front of the mirror. They'd be crooked. I'd take it off, I'd remount them, I'd stand in front of the mirror until I got them right. Then I had to put on that yellow, bright yellow sash. Y'all familiar with the bright yellow sash that we wear? Regulations call for it to be 10 feet long and hang 18 inches down. Now, 10 feet long for a sash is pretty good for men of larger stature than I. But for me, especially if I'm by myself, I have to stretch it out and put it under one of the big books on my bookcase at the end of the hallway. I walk down the hallway, put it around me, and then begin to twist as I walk down the hallway. The boots, the cavalry boots, were polished. I had attached my dress officer spurs. And for you ladies who, it's been said, I love a man in uniform, you would have drooled that day because I was pretty. Not pretty, but pretty. There's a difference. Time came for me to go and get Miss Mattie. I walked over and offered her my arm. We began to walk slowly towards the podium where she was to receive her award. Miss Mattie said to me, I don't know why y'all are making such a fuss. I said, it's because you're special, Miss Mattie. She stopped. I thought, oh my goodness, we've done something wrong. But we stopped. Miss Mattie looked at me and she said, Ronnie, it's not what I do, it's what Weary did. Wow. What a simple statement that had such a profound lesson to me as an individual. And in order to explain how this affected me, sir, I removed the medals. I would put away the badge of the office that I hold. And I would declare to you, I stand in front of you today as nothing more, nothing less than a proud descendant of a Confederate veteran. That's all that really matters. Each one of you here today that claims Confederate ancestry is the same. Your level of pride is dictated by one of two things: either your ego or your conscience. I was asked one time by a friend if in a combat situation I found myself in a foxhole, who would I prefer to be in that foxhole with me? I immediately answered and said, a fellow Marine, because I know how he's trained. I know how he thinks. I know he will be there for me if needed. However, I continued and told him it didn't matter as long as he wore the uniform of the same country as I. Ms. Mattie's statement brought to mind a little story that I wrote. Sister Teresa shared it with many of her friends. Sister Susan Hathaway shared it with some of hers. You can cast a pebble into a placid lake. Once that pebble hits, the ripples begin to go out from the point of impact. Ms. Mattie's statement was a pebble. We, as descendants of Confederate veterans, are the ripples to carry the message. It does not matter what station in life from which you came. It does not matter what pathways you've taken in your lives. It does not matter what faith that you claim. It does not matter what ethnicity you are. The only thing that matters is that we grasp the fact it is not what we do. It is what those men who wore the same uniform did for our beloved Southland. Ms. Mattie's words will continue to ripple as long as we, members of the various historical honor societies gathered here today, proclaim the true history of those men. I want to thank the family for allowing me to be a part of the escort to lead Miss Mattie to that home in heaven not built by hands. Thank you.
Now for an inspirational hymn, Amazing Grace, from Past Commander Terry Grissett, Camp 36, 16th South Carolina Infantry, Sons of Confederate Barons in Greenville, North Carolina.
It is a signal honor for me to be allowed to stand here and sing for Miss Mattie. And I said I'm singing for her because we know the Lord's listening to what's going on here, and I'd kind of like to think if Miss Mattie's with him, he's letting her listen too. So Miss Mattie, I hope you like the way I sing this. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
Now for a special message from our keynote speaker, friend of Miss Mattie, representing the United Daughters of the Confederacy and the Order of the Confederate Rose, and as a friend of the family, Miss Teresa Rome.
Good afternoon. To the family of Mrs. Mattie Clyburn Rice, daughters, sons, and people of the South, we are gathered on this sacred ground to honor a most gracious lady, affectionately known as Miss Mattie. Miss Mattie was born September 15, 1922. She married Theodore Rice and was a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. She was the epitome of a Southern lady. When did I first encounter this lady? It was in 2009. I was the archivist for the former Museum of the Confederacy, and the UDC magazine arrived monthly for the library. Under the section for the North Carolina Division, there was an article about a lady who was a real daughter. The article went on to explain about her father's service and her quest to prove it. It also mentioned that she joined the Guildford Chapter 301. I could not believe my eyes. In my excitement, I passed the magazine around to several people. I remember saying to them that I would love to meet her. She became my inspiration to learn more about people of color in the Confederate military. Why was she such an inspiration? A month later, I was invited to a UDC meeting in Richmond. I was told that if my family had been in the South for generations, then there was probably a Confederate ancestor in my family tree. If Miss Mattie could prove her father's record, then I was going to pursue my own lineage research. Miss Mattie spent so many years trying to prove her father's record. I cannot imagine her struggle. Please try to imagine the hardship of getting people to understand that a man of color served in the Confederate military. Historians for decades have tried, and more importantly, continue to try to discount the thousands of people of color who served in the Confederate military. How sad and maddening to have your father's service purged from history. From this opposition, she found the strength to fight. Her father received a Confederate pension. You would think that would be enough proof, but one historian in a blog discounted the information. What a shame, because one of my former colleagues fell for that blogger's information. Please, let me be perfectly clear. In order to earn a pension, one has to have witnesses and go before a judge. No one is going to lie to a judge. I am glad that she lived long enough to find the proof. Real sons and daughters still exist today. It is quite offensive to claim that Southerners were the bad people in this war. People who are unaware do not understand the implications of their prejudice. You are insulting their fathers. Miss Mattie handled the critics with grace and dignity. I attended a North Carolina SCV meeting when an announcement mentioned a fundraiser to create a marker for Confederate pensioners of color in Union County. I took the flyer back to Richmond and read the information. By this time, through trials and tribulations, I finally found my ancestor. I contributed money for the cause and put it on my calendar to attend the dedication. My fiancé and I made the trip and arrived on a beautiful December day. As I sat down, I looked up to see Miss Mattie seated near the marker. Members of the Order of the Black Rose took good care of her. People approached her, and I watched the respect she received. I finally took a deep breath and introduced myself to her. I told her that I had traveled from Richmond, Virginia, and nothing was going to keep me from honoring her father. She looked up at me and softly said, "Thank you for coming." She has such quiet dignity. The dedication was a magnificent service. People of all races were sitting together to honor her father and the other soldiers of color. When Miss Mattie walked over and unveiled the marker, the hard work of proving his service and seeing him honored completed her mission. Miss Mattie was a life member of the Lower Western Chapter 5 of the Order of Confederate Rose, and she attended monthly meetings of the Lieutenant F.C. Frazier Camp. In February 2003, my fiance, Eric Richardson, was the camp's guest speaker. We all had a great time. I was called up to receive a replica of the marker. Miss Mattie helped with the presentation. I broke down, and Miss Mattie put her hand on my shoulder, and with tremendous tenderness, she calmed me. I told her that she was an inspiration. She quietly told me that her father was too old to work, and she was too young to go to school. They would go into town where her father would hang out with the other Confederate veterans and talk about their days in the war. She also mentioned that there was more to the story than what was shown on Roots. Then, with a twinkle in her eye, she said, "People tell me that I'm famous. Am I famous?" I smiled and said, "Oh, Miss Mattie, you are famous." What a wonderful sense of humor. 2 summers ago, I was the guest speaker at the Lieutenant F.C. Frazier Camp. The then Commander-in-Chief of the SCV, R. Michael Gibbons, paid a visit to camp and surprised Miss Mattie with 2 well-deserved medals. One, the Horace L. Hunley Award, which is the second highest medal the SCV awards, and the other medal is the Commander-in-Chief Ladies Appreciation Medal. One statement that he made that night resonated with me. He looked at the members and said, "No one in here had to deal with anyone doubting that one had a Confederate ancestor, but it was not the case for Miss Mattie." That was a powerful statement. What determination to not give up when she could have at any time. This past April, the North Carolina Division of the SCV held a reunion in Valdez. Miss Mattie was one of the recipients of the Rebecca Alfred Jones Bonnie Blue Medal from the division. Unfortunately, she was not up for traveling, but her medal was delivered by special people from the division. She looked so pleased. On September 1st, several people contacted me to tell me about the sad news of Miss Mattie's passing. That day, we lost a special real daughter, but heaven gained an angel. Rest in peace with your daddy, Miss Mattie, and know that your legacy will endure for future generations. Thank you.
Nothing like personal messages. Now, 16th South Carolina Volunteers Confederate Honor Guard with the family of Mattie Clyburn Rice is going to do a special unveiling. Now for the laying of the wreath. From the OCR, North Carolina Society, Little Rosebuds, Chloe and Peyton Page. On behalf of the OCR North Carolina Society, Renee Honeycutt, escorted by Damon Webb. On behalf of the Lower Weston Chapter 5 of High Point, North Carolina, President Janice Horn, escorted by Fraser Camp Adjutant Todd Southern. On behalf of the Marianne Montgomery Forest Chapter 53 of Sanford, North Carolina, Miss Angela Baker, escorted by Lane Baker. On behalf of the OCR South Carolina Society, President Lisa Graham, escorted by Jamie Graham. OCR Virginia Society, escorted by Willie Wells, Miss Susan Hathaway. The OCR Society of the Black Rose, Miss Yvonne Brown. On behalf of the SCV Edmund Ruffin Fire Eaters Camp 3000 of Richmond, Virginia, Mr. Jim Tingle. On behalf of the Southern Soldier Remembrance Foundation, Kelly Atkins Henson with Shiloh Henson. Of the United Daughters of the Confederacy General Headquarters, Real Daughter Wreath by Miss Teresa Rome, escorted by Wary's grandson, County Hall. On behalf of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, Ellison Capers, Chapter 70 of Florence, South Carolina, Miss Angela Clyburn, and President Bert Wilson. On behalf of the Virginia Flaggers, Mr. Packard Say. Now for a military musket salute, I'd like to introduce the Confederate Memorial Honor Guard, Sons of Confederate Veterans. Following behind them will be the military cannon salute from the Confederate Memorial Cannon Crew, Military Orders of Stars and Bars. Everybody look at the cannon. There you go, Miss Mattie.
This is for Miss Mattie and her daddy. I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixieland, where I was born, early on one frosty morn, look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Then I wish I was in Dixie, hooray, hooray. In Dixieland I'll take my stand, to live and die in Dixie. Away, away, away down south in Dixie. Away, away, look away down south in Dixie.
It's Crystal Stone and Jane Brewer. Rose Beyond the Wall.
Once grew where all could see.
sheltered beside a garden wall. As the days passed swiftly by, it spread its branches straight and tall. One day a beam of light shone through a crevice that had opened wide. The rose bent gently toward the warmth, then passed beyond to the other side. Now you who deeply feel its loss, be comforted, the rose blooms there on the other side. Its beauty, even greater now, nurtured by God's loving care.
Friendship is predominantly one way from her family to mine. I wouldn't be here, my sisters wouldn't, my children, my grandchildren, except that Mary was determined to go with him into this situation and saved him. And I praise God for that. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce you, final thoughts, to a friend of Mattie's, Commander-in-Chief Emeritus of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, Mr. R. Michael Gibbons.
Commander Ron Perdue, and the rest of these men that put this together and women that came together, I think we owe a great deal of respect and appreciation. I want to say something about Miss Mattie. The last time I was with Miss Mattie, I was at that meeting that Teresa Roan was speaking at, and she spoke of just a few minutes ago. And I sat next to her during that speech of hers, and I have to tell you, there's few people in this world I love to hear more than Miss Teresa Roan, because she tells the truth. And for me to be able to sit with Miss Mattie, who I have come to learn and to know, is an icon. But let me tell you what Miss Mattie really is and why we all have come together today and have spent so much time expressing love to that lady. Not only is she different than the rest of us, I mean, look, I come from South Carolina, and I spent 6 years of my youth from 6 to 12 in Mississippi. If I'd have told people that I was the great-great-grandson of a Confederate veteran, they would yawn and say, yeah, what's for chicken tonight? Because it would mean absolutely nothing. Nobody would ever deny me. And now it's time that nobody denies anybody. You know why? Because Miss Mattie is one of the very few people, one of the very few special people in this world that is a trailblazer, that is willing to stand up for her convictions when people said no. She was willing to stand up and stand by her family and by her father when people said no. That's why we love Mattie Clyburn Rice. That's why we're here today. And when she would say, this is not for me, this is for Weary. Well, listen, the same blood that coursed through Weary's veins when he stood on the front lines and he fired at an enemy that was invading his homeland, the same blood that was coursing through his veins when he took his friend Frank and put him on his shoulder and carried him home, is the same blood that coursed through her veins when she stood up for her own heritage that's the same as yours and the same as mine. Amen. I'll tell you what, let's cut to the chase. What is happening here today and what I've seen happen recently, also on December the 8th, 2012, when I was at that unveiling for that marker of Confederate men of color. That's the last time I'm going to say that. That was a marker for Confederate soldiers. Period. And folks, all I can say about that is it's about time. It's not just about time to recognize everybody that fought for what was right, to fight against an invasion of their homeland. It is time for all of us to stop walking on eggshells and swallowing the propaganda that people that have told us about our families. Folks, I want to tell you something. You might say we have a mixed audience here. There would be people that would come from the outside that would say we and would say us. But folks, we are all the same. We are all exactly the same. When the United States of America invaded the southern part of the country, it was never said that it was its purpose was to stop a labor system. In fact, Abraham Lincoln constantly said that it was not. They needed an excuse because they could not say that invading a part of the country, a country that was based on the consent of the governed, according to our Declaration of Independence, would certainly not work. So they needed to find an emotional reason, and an emotional reason to keep the rest of the world out. Well, guess what? Your ancestors and my ancestors were side by side when they worked and when they fought. And I'm going to tell you this. If they wanted to keep slavery, all they had to do was to stay in the United States of America where it was legal. Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederacy, said to everyone at the beginning, said, this will be the end of slavery. And I'm going to tell you, that was a welcome sound to most people in the South, black and white. So, let's let this be the beginning, where we can all come together. We can all celebrate the heritage and the vigor and the fight of our communal ancestors. We're all the same in this fight. We all have the same love, not just for Mattie, not just for Wary, but for every one of these men that were willing to fight for independence. Now, I've been asked to sum things up with some final words. Commander Perdue started us today with saying that Miss Mattie was blessed and that we're blessed to know her. And this is true. But I'm going to tell you right now, I can't give you any final words. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm going to say something about Miss Mattie. I'm going to say that I love Miss Mattie, and I'm going to say that I love everybody that's just like Miss Mattie, which is everybody here. But when you walk away from here, guess what you're going to be doing? You're going to be thinking about Miss Mattie. Guess what you'll probably do tomorrow? You'll probably think of Miss Mattie. And as long as there are people in this world that are willing to stand up for what's right, like Miss Mattie and like her daddy, then there will be no final words about people like that. So I just want to say this as a final word, that as you leave here today, I hope that God gives His special blessings to you and to your families. And I hope that you go out and you understand that we are all as one in this fight to remember the people that did what was right. And we will do what is right for those people, even if we suffer scorn from people who say otherwise, because it is important to us and important to our children